Ever since the election last year, there's been so much talk about fake news. And while there is a big epidemic going on of misinformation that people are consuming, there's another issue that's taking place right now, and that's the social and digital communities that are trying to basically eliminate fake news. Now, the thing that everyone needs to realize about fake news is that it doesn't necessarily mean that everything about the information is wrong. What it essentially means is that the content maybe comes from a hyper-partisan angle. It's a lot like sponsored content, where you read something and you're like, wow, this makes a product look really, really good. Well, that's on purpose. And a lot of it's the same with fake news, where they find a way to spin information to potentially mislead or guide people or change someone's mind about something. And if that's the only content someone consumes, that becomes the basis of their opinion. Now, I digress. This past week, Facebook basically talked about how they're building algorithms and building a solution to make sure that fake news isn't being shared, especially in their top news items. And this is important because nowadays, instead of going to the newspaper or even to traditional media sites, a lot of people start and end their search and their content consumption on Facebook. And so they have almost a fiduciary duty to the markets and to the communities to make sure that the information that is being put in front of people is real. And for a long time, maybe you used Snopes, or maybe you used another tool to sort out what information that was coming through your feed was real versus what is not. But that still didn't always guarantee that you were able to completely fish out what often looks like very legitimate information. Now, the reason I talk about this from a digital transformation standpoint is because Facebook now is basically making a decision on data and information bias. And this is going to be really important as we go forward in terms of building brands, communities, and building image online, is that when media sites that we often use organically and in paid capacity to share content that's going to help us to improve our brand status, to create awareness of products and services. Now, essentially what's happening is a brand is not only going so far as to decide what gets into someone's feed based on algorithms of interest, but now they're basically deciding what is true and untrue. And they're creating these disputed pieces of information, this disputed news. And the question I'm kind of asking back to the markets is, as a brand like Facebook does this already in the way they filter out information to a news feed, is bias in a company like a Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Instagram, any digital media that we might consume now, making conscious decisions of what news is real and what news is fake, become a conflict of interest when their biases are also lying underneath what the company is doing. And what do I mean by this? Well, every company has a certain stance on an issue. And whether or not they're publicly announcing their stance, you can always tell just by the content they tend to promote, the content that they publish most often. Well, this goes to be the same with when a media company like Facebook, who's not writing the content, but is essentially deciding what content is being shared, they have the opportunity to create a disputed or fake news label around content that maybe is no more fake than another piece of information or content that they decide to share because it leans towards their bias. And so I'm curious, what does the market think? Is the disputed news, is media companies basically putting their stamp on what is fake and what is real news as risky as allowing fake news and unreal or unproven or disputed news to be published? So that's a really interesting thing that we need to consider going forward, and it's something that's going to change as we continue to see the impact of content for branding, content for sharing new company information, content for updating people on products, services, even locations. Because now all of a sudden, if you want to promote a certain location, perhaps tourism, now a particular company may have interest based upon how that part of the world has been supportive of that brand, and they limit who's going to see it. So there's a lot going on around fake news, and there's a lot going on around this disputed news, but it's going to be very interesting to watch as basically new media is going to become the rubber stamp for what information is real and what information is not.